Last night we spoke about Geelong Brownlow medalist and premiership star Patrick Dangerfield when he spoke glowingly about one of his low-profile teammates. Now, in an excerpt from the book The Greatest Team of All, the story of Geelong's premiership season, here's what Dangerfield had to say about Max Holmes, of all players. There are Chris Judd-like traits. He has phenomenal endurance, but also electric speed. It's a rare combination. He hasn't played all that much footy during his junior days, and I think he's starting to find out just how good he can be. We haven't played him that much as an inside mid yet, but he can also be a good stoppage player. I believe he could be the best player in the competition at some stage. He truly could be. Well, that's some prediction for a 20-year-old wingman with 30 games and 14 goals to his name, but I don't mind it. It's a big, brave prediction, and clearly Dangerfield has the perspective of watching Holmes develop up close as a teammate for the last 2 years. Now, Holmes may or may not reach those lofty expectations. Unfortunately, it's going to be at least half a decade before we can judge Dangerfield's prediction. So who can be the best player in the competition in 2023? There's only a handful in the conversation. Of course, the judgment in itself is never universally agreed upon amongst most fans and football supporters alike. Still, you must have specific playing characteristics and athletic abilities to be included in the conversation. Number one, well, it's scoreboard impact. Either you kick the goals yourself, you set them up, or ideally both. In past years, it's been Carey, Judd, Franklin, Ablett, Martin, and this year Jeremy Cameron all have that common trait. A defender will never be the best player in the competition, unfortunately. They'll make the top 10, think Tom Stewart and Stephen May, but they'll never be the best player in the game. And the same can be said for the accumulating midfielder, especially if they handball more than they kick and they don't kick goals themselves. As good as Clayton Oliver is, and he might just be the best midfielder in the game, he's never going to be the best player in the league until he pushes forward more. In 2022, Oliver had 65 more handballs than kicks, and he kicked just 5 goals. The same applies for Brisbane Brownlow medalist Lachie Neale. Contrast that with the giant leap made by Carlton Brownlow medalist Patrick Cripps. Cripps rocketed into the conversation because he impacted the scoreboard. His 20 goals this season were a career high by 7, and the umps rewarded him with 29 Brownlow votes. A ruckman will never be the best player in the competition either. Young players such as Chad Warner, Cam Rayner, Max King, Connor Rosie, Noah Anderson, Jamari Ugle-Hagan, Josh Rochelle, Jason Horne-Francis, they all have the attributes to one day be thought of the best in the league. Dangerfield would argue Holmes should be in that company. Forecasting to next year, here's the entire list of elite players capable of being crowned the best player in the league by season's end. Jeremy Cameron, Shai Bolton, Toby Green, Marcus Bontempelli, Dustin Martin, although I'm not entirely sure Dusty is motivated to play, Charlie Curnow, Patrick Cripps, Hugh McCluggage, Aaron Norton, and my tip for 2023, Christian Petrarca. There's only 10 in the running, all are forward half midfielders or key forwards. Gerard, whom do you think is the best player in the game right now? And did I leave anyone off the list? 1300 736 736 to join in the conversation.
I'm not sure who you left off the list, but I would, if you had to ask me who I think will be the best player in the comp next year, I'm going for the Bont. I think the Bont, he was almost the best player in the comp this year, but he also had to deal with lots of injury issues. I mean, he didn't win his club best and fairest. He didn't get in the All-Australian side, but he's still, if you're rating it as impact, his impact was still enormous, even though he didn't have as many possessions. I would have said Oliver was the best player in the comp this year. I think most of the awards got it pretty well right. Petrarca, I know, is your man. Last year, he had 65 shots. He kicked 19 goals.
Inaccurate.
So if Petrarca kicks 30 goals, he probably will shoot straight past. Just take a little exception to you on the ruckman. I agree with you about the defenders. I don't think, even though I'm a huge fan of Jeremy McGovern, at his absolute best, he's still probably not in the top 5 or 6 players in the comp, just by virtue of what you said. But, he made a push a couple of years ago, and I think he's an unbelievable player. Nat Nui, I reckon, was the best player in the comp in 2020. And I reckon Grundy and Gawn went head-to-head for a couple of years, 18, 19, etc. So I think Ruckman can get there. I look at Tim English, and I think, that kid, I'm looking for an outperformer for next year. I reckon English was stiff not to be All-Australian this year. Not enough games to warrant it, but he's coming on in leaps and bounds around the ground. He's just got to tidy up probably his work with his hands.
I wonder if a ruckman will prove me wrong. I mean, Luke Jackson would be of the mould at a player that's capable of doing it, but
now he proved you wrong 2 years ago. 3 years ago.
he was rated as the best player.
Yeah.
I didn't think he was the best player. I didn't think 10 possessions and 2 marks a game and no goals.
It's impact around the
It's not going to
clearance.
cut it for me. Yeah, I understand the hit outs and how dangerous he was at centre bounces, but
And his own clearances.
yes, all of that, but I think there was better than Nick Nat Nui. Rob, we'll get to you. Who's going to be the best player in the game?
G'day, boys. This bloke's not the best player in the league at the moment, but he definitely can be. He's the most exciting player in the league, and I would go and watch him even though it ain't Barrack for them.
Well, spit it out. How is it?
No. Shai Bolton.
Yeah. No, I'm 100% agree with every single word you've said. And I said it last year. He was a top 10 player last year with an absolute rocket. And I mean, the 5-year deal and all of that, I'd love to know what they're paying him because I reckon he'd be worth every cent. The 23 years of age off the top of my head and just has an incredible future and a nightmare matchup for anyone.
Nightmare matchup. He's in the same ilk as Rose Z.
Yep.
I reckon his move into the middle was timely. It was probably overdue. But ball in hand, forward to the centre forward, he's a hell of a player coming through. Late, probably as good a year after about round 6 as anybody in the comp last year.
Yeah,
this
no
year.
doubt.